Dr. Pran Yoganathan. Yoganathan.
You said it well, mate.
You
said it well. Yeah.
And welcome, mate. It's been months, probably near a year actually. I think I met you, but I know you're a busy man, and I respect where you are, and what you do. So thank you. And Aidan Biasi, found out he's now become a patient.
Yeah. Without giving away patient-doctor confidentiality, but it's been great to know Aidan. He's a good man. I've enjoyed his company.
Thank you.
Yeah, so you're a gastroenterologist, is that?
Yeah, so for short, we're called gastros, but the full term is a gastroenterologist. We're fundamentally physicians. In the old days, we were considered physicians, but in this new world, we've become more subspecialized in our fields, which is probably a good thing because it allows for specialization of an art or a craft, but also can lead to significant reductionism because we become so focused on a topic through a very narrow lens that we can miss the big picture sometimes, which is one of the failings of modern medicine. But I'm a specialist in the gut, basically. Very, very important organ, and I'm sure we'll touch on it at various points. Yeah,
and not just physically, but also spiritually as well, which I like how you look into the gut as well.
I mean, we can look at the gut as like a primitive primordial memory, right? Like if you want to look at it from an evolutionary perspective, the very first creatures that emerged out of the ocean or that were the progenitors to what emerged out of the ocean, they didn't really have a central nervous system like a brain and a spinal cord. It was all something called an enteric nervous system. Enteric in Latin is essentially gut. So it's a gut-based nervous system. These creatures still exist in the ocean. They're called hydras and other forms like that. But it shows you that the gut-based nervous system was the primitive. It was the original nervous system, and from the gut-based nervous system over time through evolution, we had the brain and the spinal cord emerge, which is a central nervous system. So the gut is a primordial memory. It carries with it primitive instincts. So, there are some people that are super blessed intuitively. That is a gut-based instinct. When you're under duress, some people carry that in their gut. That is a primitive memory of stress, And so I've had to, over time, I've had to really delve into psychology to sort of understand why people get gut-based distress. So my journey as a physician has been tempered with that realization. So that's taken me into the domain of the mind, which is obviously the biggest domain you can enter. And I'm just a guy navigating my way in that labyrinth, many minotaurs and demons in there, and I'm just making my way through and writing about it and talking about it as I go on.
That's why you're here.
Yeah. Thanks, mate. Thank you. Yeah.
I love your work. And how to ask, how did you to get this Pran before? How did you get to doing this with the gut, working with the gut, like your profession?
How did I go into my specialty?
Yeah, how did you get there?
Look, everything's just been a series of accidents, to be honest, Dan. I don't believe in the concept of free will, and we can touch on that later, but like life has just been a series of accidents, fleeing a war, age 6, to then entering the chaos of Nigeria, which itself was in a civil war. So I left from Sri Lanka as one of the minority that was persecuted to a country in Africa, which is Nigeria, who themselves were enmeshed in a civil war. So from frying pan into the fire, and then fleeing that into Zimbabwe, which itself turned into turmoil as Robert Mugabe came into power and the AIDS epidemic was starting to become a problem there. So it's just been a series of chaotic events, and then eventually culminating in us relocating to New Zealand. And then, I fell into medicine. I've always been mathematically and linguistically gifted, but I did medicine because I remember my father saying something offhand one day, because I was very problematic child. He said, you won't really make anything of yourself. So I did medicine, not to make him proud, but to actually, out of spite, to show him. I mean, I've got a terrible characteristic to me, which is that I feel like I need to go to battle all the time. And that's probably through years of just being bred in these chaotic situations. My nervous system's just geared for war. So if someone challenges me, that is my path to following something. So I didn't fall into medicine because I wanted to help people. I did it to spite my father, and when you look at how absurd that is, you realize perhaps life is just a series of, predetermined events that you've got to live. So I entered med school quite early. I think it was about 16. Wow. And I was too young. I just played up in med school. I was done by about 21, 22, and then just fled my, the safety of home to come to Australia when I was about 22 and started work as a junior doctor. And I've been here since. I'm nearly 45 now. So that's my path. Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. And this is where you come across Aidan.
Very interesting how that came about. I had a woman on my podcast, Jen, who was suffering from Crohn's disease. And she was on my podcast talking about how she utilized the carnivore lifestyle as an elimination protocol to get rid of her inflammation. And she did it hardcore for 3 years, she said, and noticed the difference within 6 months. And she said to me, she was following up on our conversation and said, hey, my dentist recommended someone that you should go and see out in Castle Hill. He's quite holistic and he thinks a lot like you do. Because I was bouncing around between doctors that were just kind of, I think, trying to just get $1 out of me. Like I said, I had my gallbladder removed very early before I was diagnosed with any autoimmune condition, which now, having undergone carnivore and everything, realized what a big mistake that was. But, you got to understand that these things are all happening for a greater purpose. And so without hesitation, I'm very in tune with the gifts that Providence can bestow upon you. So I said, well, this is obviously a very easy sign to take. So I booked straight away. Didn't care about cost, didn't care about travel time. I actually quite enjoy the drive from the beaches to Castle Hill. I use it as a time for reflection, sometimes silence to mindfulness. And straight away, when you walked in, you said, do you know a Daniel? Do you have a brother or a cousin called Daniel? And then it dawned on me, because I had no idea that you two knew each other. And I just said, what are the odds that you were thrust into my life not that long ago, like not even a year ago, and then you have come into the picture, and then it really just reaffirms that the idea that there is something guiding you, and that you're led down that path for a purpose, regardless of the suffering involved. And I'm glad I landed in your midst, because I do feel more safe and like I have permission to kind of be somebody in the midst of illness that I didn't previously have permission to before from my last specialist. So it's an incredible journey to come, I think, that we've all found each other for a purpose.
100%, yeah.
I think, yeah.
Yeah, at the deepest layers, we're all kind of interconnected, and, these collisions are never by accident. As I said to you, there is an element of precognition or predetermination to how our souls interact with each other. And I think it's a glorious thing. I'm certainly, better off for having met you guys as well. And we're here today discussing it, which is good.
Yeah. Well, so like you also said to the other side of it, where I don't know if you want to speak much about your condition.
I have on our on the shows a lot, and in retrospect, looking back, because I do like to look back on all the podcasts I've done, the podcasts we've done. So I like to better myself. Where could I have been more articulate? Where could I have enunciated better? Or stuff like that. So, and I realized last night I had smoked, I was stoned, I was next to my wife on the couch, and we were watching the latest nightly order that we'd done. And because I was a little bit more in tune with what I was trying to do, because my perception was heightened because of the cannabis, I was sitting there going, all I've done this whole episode is just talk about myself. I haven't jived with you guys about anything else. I've literally just made this illness my personality. What am I doing? And that's exactly what I didn't want to do today. So to answer your question, I don't want to talk about it much. I've kind of had my little epiphany, but I will allude to it and come back to it as we need to, because I'm in the midst of a very brilliant gastroenterologist
Yeah.
who knows a shitload about what I'm going through.
Yeah.
And credit to you, you were the first specialist I've ever seen that did actually implement that psychological analysis of me. How do you feel about this? If this is the future that you have to walk into, what are your thoughts? Know that you're not alone. I didn't get that from anyone else at all. And from that short window of time where I met you to now, I've written all this poetry. I've gotten in touch with basically just with what the emotions, what it's brought up, and cultivating it through poetry has been a massive thing. And you believe it or not, inspired it just from just asking, how does it sit with you? Do you know what I mean? It's very interesting just how that can make such a difference in someone's journey. Just not also playing the doctor, but playing the friend, the older brother, the mentor. I'm not only here to treat you, but I'm also here to make sure that you don't lose yourself along the way.
And that's where it counts the most.
And you said to me in that first consultation, don't lose yourself in this journey. And I said, doctor, it's quite the contrary. I haven't lost myself. If anything, I found myself. I found that this journey was something I needed to be to become the man I needed to be. And all the people that you attract are there to make that journey easier or to serve a purpose, as we said.
Yeah.
So Daniel, it's a beautiful thing.
It is a beautiful thing, man. There's ways written poetry, mate. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think the great spark is infectious. I think that's what it is. When you're in contact with a man that's really no longer wearing masks, I think it's a beautiful thing. I've always enjoyed Daniel's company. A lot of his views may not necessarily align with me, but what I love about Daniel is that there are no masks. You see the good, the bad, the evil, the perverse, whatever it is, it all just spills out. And a man like that, I've got time for. I think, those that concern me, and I maintain my boundaries very, very strictly. I don't allow them into my inner sanctum, are those that there is an air of perfection about them, and my industry is prone to that. They're cloaked in degrees and accolades and surrounded by the armor of academia, and they move in elite circles and they drive these beautiful cars. And I seek, to be honest, none of that. I'm being blessed with material success because of the industry that I'm in, and I see myself as a cog in the wheel of this industrial revolution, and I'm part of that medical industrial complex that was spawned from it. So I've certainly benefited from it, but at the same time, it's a juxtaposition. It's a paradox that I wrestle with a lot, which is that, how am I going to charge people for my gift? Like I've literally got a gift to be able to touch people deep in their soul. And Carl Jung wrote about it, brilliant psychiatrist. He said, when you touch another person's soul, just be another soul, just be two people just connecting at the deepest level. So disease is essentially a cross that you've got to bear, especially chronic illness. And having been around it so much, I'm really interested in how it impacts a person's psyche. And for people, it can become the entire reason for existence is having to bear this cross without seeing that the end purpose might be crucifixion on that cross for a greater realization, for a greater purpose. And so it really requires us to suspend our ego to see what that greater purpose is. My perspective has always been that not always, I think I've evolved into it, is that we're still very infantile in our perspective. We think that the world revolves around us. It's us. We're very egocentric. But perhaps we start seeing ourselves as pawns on a greater chessboard that's being played by powers that we can't fathom. Like instruments. Mm-hmm. We're essentially instruments for something greater than us,
Yeah, we are. Takes you back to that Matrix conversation. I saw your post about Agent Smith.
Yeah.
And yeah, really, it's spot on, isn't it? Very biblical.
Yeah.
In the way, especially what's happening now. When you raise your vibration, we talked about this before, you do come to a higher level, and you can understand. It's like I see what you write as well. Your poetry is so in depth, and like when you actually read it, but to be able to read it, to understand it, you really got to switch off. It's so deep, And I think that's where You know, I like how you express that, like coming back, like the cattle, right? Talking about the cattle, you know, that there's your wolves in sheep clothing, you know, you got your sheepdog. I don't know if that's your character, you know, because you protect the sheep from the wolves, you know, and that's what I see by you expressing that. Like you need to dance with the devil sometimes, and understand the devil.
Yeah, absolutely, because it's all within, you know, as Jesus said, Yeshua, you know, the proper pronunciation, Yeshua said, the kingdom is within, right? So you got to step into the kingdom. We've become highly extrospective, right? Like we think the world around us shapes us, but the world within us is the actual, it's the focal point. It's the axis mundi, basically, the navel point from where everything originates, the pillar. And so once you step into that layer within, a whole different world opens up, and it's like any other kingdom. It's filled with good guys, bad guys, monsters, demons, angels, archetypes, primal blueprints. It's a scary place. It's a terrifying place that most are not ready. And you know, I've witnessed the psychedelic revolution rise again, you know, and I'm seeing doctors starting to trial this, and even Australia's TGA has approved the use of, you know, things like psilocybin in treating a lot of serious depressive disorders and so forth. Whilst I don't necessarily have an opinion on the use of psychedelics, I don't, you know, promote it or condone it, whatever. It's essentially what it is doing is allowing this person who's been extrospecting their whole life, looking outside, to get an experience of themselves. And once they witness that experience of themselves, they realize there's a deeper world within. Now, children are constantly in that type of experience, is my perspective, before society fractures them. Before the ages of 7, before they enter this system we call the schooling system, which is designed to break their spirits and essentially create robotic individuals, which harks back to our you know, my earlier statement about the Industrial Revolution. Like, we're designed to fulfill the beast that has become the industrial, you know, the product of the Industrial Revolution. But, you know, children, before we fracture them through parenting and society, school, whatever, are constantly in that type of experience. You know, I said to my daughter yesterday, draw me heaven and hell, and she went into her imagination. She's 6. And drew it purely out of her own mind. They're constantly within. And it's such a beautiful experience. So I think you don't necessarily need a psychedelic experience. You can engage your own active imagination, which is a method that I use. Some people do it through meditation. You know, some of these brilliant meditators like the Buddhist monks, etc., you give them things like psilocybin or LSD, and experiments have been done that they say, yeah, okay, this is the state that we're in all the time when we meditate. It's not a surprise to them. Whereas us in this rational world of the Western civilization, and East too, because everything has become the West, let's be honest. It is the United States of America. I mean, that is modern day Babylon, and Babylon is not a geographical place anymore. It is the entirety of this civilization, this Babylonian empire that we exist in. It's stripped it. It stripped it purposely for a reason, because a man or a woman who's starting to realize who they are is antithetical to the levers of control, basically. And that's what this system desires. It desires sheep, cattle, however we want to look at it, robots, and it seeks to rule over them. But, you know, I think some of us are starting to remember, so people call it an existential crisis, you know, to even label it a crisis, which paints it in the negative light, just shows you how sick this society is. I loved my midlife breakdown, you know, because it was a doorway into the kingdom that I've entered. And listen, like I haven't conquered this kingdom. I haven't the knight brandishing the sword hasn't become the king within, but I'm certainly on that hero's journey where I'm slaying beasts and writing about it. You know, that's all I'm doing. You know. Yeah.
I love it, dude. I think we all are. That's fantastic, Pran.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a lot to process, man. You're right. You're right. And I think that's where people do psychedelics to get to that place where you got the monks and the Buddhists, which it takes me onto the Gnostic, Gnosticism. And I looked into it. I've always been interested. You've mentioned it as well when you talk about it. And I was like, this is probably where I'm at, because the modern day Gnosticism, they reckon it is meditation, yoga and stuff and all that, find whatever they believe in, it's find that within.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the Gnostic Jesus, right?
Yeah.
It's like to find that, like you say, we are God, you are, we are each other.
Yeah.
God is within us.
Yeah.
And I think that's what I see from your poetry, what you put up there. Like, I can resonate to it, because you don't want to sound cocky in a way. You want to explain it to a point where we all have that.
Yeah.
It's just people, I think, find ways out not to get there, because it is hard. It's that narrow path. It's that, and I find the further you get to that point, it's you become more alone.
Yeah, of course. I think there are some key statements here, right? Like the Hindus, or the ancient Vedantic philosophy, was brilliant. I think it encompasses and touches on a lot of Gnosticism. There's a lot of overlap there. Gnosticism being a sect of Christianity, a very, very ancient sect of Christianity, which was pretty rapidly stamped out by the Roman Catholic Church. Mm-hmm. And you've got to ask the question of why was something stamped out like that? Because it is radically different to modern day Christianity. I think I'm well versed in the Bible, and I don't consider myself a Christian. You get to, but I was born a Hindu. You get to a point where you're fighting so many battles within that you start understanding. Gnosis is knowledge, basically. And once you're equipped with knowledge, you can't be classified. I'm not a Christian, Muslim, Jew. I'm none of those things, because I'm initiated, in that language of Gnosis. I can't be controlled or contained within a narrow constraint. And that makes me heretical to the system. It makes anyone on that journey heretical to the system. And that is the right path to be on, where you're not contained. Gnosticism, I think, is a brilliant take on it, but there are other ways to look at it as well. So when Jesus made the comment to the Pharisees as they were persecuting him that ye are gods, you are gods, he's telling them, they said, well, that's blasphemous, and that was a part of the evidence used against him to end up where he ended up. But what he was saying was that the true self is not your ego, and which is what Vedantic philosophy says. It says that, you've got to look at consciousness as an ocean, right? The ego are little boats on top of that ocean, right? And that's us. Each of us is a boat within that vessel. There are archetypes, these primal algorithms that move us, the trickster archetype, that seductive archetype, the archetype of the ancient mother, and there's many, 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 infinite number of archetypes of the currents that move the boats. And so we move in the direction of these archetypes. But once you start, if the soul was to throw itself off the edge of the boat and sink into the bottom, the further down you go, you'll encounter some very ancient energies as you're descending. Archetypes exist in those depths, but the further down you go, the less partitions there are between each other, basically. So if you want to look at that comment of you are gods from an egoic perspective, well, that makes you a Superman. I'm a god. But if you look at it from the perspective of having no ego, it is that we are all the same thing. That is essentially what it's trying to say. And this is why the Bible speaks to love thy neighbor, love thy neighbor, because we're all part of the same thing. Someone said to me, how do we love each other? And the answer to that was, there is no other at the deepest level. There is no other.
We're all connected.
We're all connected. Yeah, absolutely and utterly intertwined, entangled. We're all fragments of something greater. And I believe this self right at the bottom, the true self, has divided itself into a multiplicity of egoic, selves, so that it too can evolve. Our journey is its journey. Each of us evolving separately allows it to evolve at a much greater rate than it dividing itself into 2 or 3 pieces or 4 pieces or remaining static as one. So I believe our God, if you were to classify it using a number, is the void. It's 0, right? I believe each of our egos are numbers. And so if you divide an ego by God, what do you get? A number divided by 0 is infinity. So, it just shows us that God makes everything possible, all things possible. And the further you get away from the ego, the more you start realizing that. In saying that, the ego is not a bad thing. It's been painted as this horrible thing. The ego allows us to exist, and it allows us to go on the journey. But part of that journey is the remembering, is the great remembering.
Yeah, you say that, remembering. I like that.
Yeah.
That's what we do. We were saying this before, Growing is like people see it as you're changing, or, why you're leaving me, or why is this? But I think it's remembering who we are, where we come from, mate, That's what I know you talk about a lot, and that's what you're going through that as well, Yeah. How old are you, 28?
Yeah, not
Such
even.
a baby,
Not
Pran.
yet.
Not 27.
Not even 27 still.
And see what you're going through too, that's a lot to take in. And I think through that darkness is like we always say, where you see the light, isn't it?
It's at that point though where, for me, looking at it from a very pragmatic point of view, so from the point of view of, let's just say, from a Stoic point of view, even from the Dr. Joe Dispenza, you're familiar with him, even from his point of view, whereas it's only as much of a problem as you're willing to entertain it as such. So for me, I can be self-loathing and say, why has this afflicted me? Or you can, as Marcus Aurelius said, you can own the hand that's been dealt to you and you can turn it into power. But at the end of the day, it's not always an easy thing to do, because you still have responsibilities. I have my kids, I have to work, I have to provide. You can't let the storm that's raging on inside of you then drench your family, your wife and kids. And that's been the hardest part of it so far. I feel like I'm wetting them. I have to shield them from my own storm. But also you have to then heed Marcus Aurelius to say you are calm when that storm is raging around you. And then that's just birthed this kind of pragmatic way of thinking for me, whereas, it's only going to be as bad as I allow it. And that's been the biggest thing. And that's what the biggest thing I've been writing about, is that how do I conquer my mind, or how do I tame it? Because at the moment, even not just with illness, but with everything, with work and with managing a family and just managing the people around you. Look, you got to think, like, I work at a barbershop. That's a very energy-heavy environment. And Dr. Pran and I were talking over the phone not long ago about how some of the people he works with are extremely gifted and necessary NPCs. You know what I mean? They might seem soulless, but we need them. We need people like that, because we need technicians who do biopsies and everything. They're important. But in saying that, when I get people sitting down in the chair that are just on repeat, just, oh, gee, this weather, oh, this and that. And I just think to myself, like, this is so depressing, and every time someone comes in that's able to fully comprehend what I'm all about, like talk like this, my God, then you could truly do what you do for free. As you said, when it's like that, I don't feel like charging for it. As you said, like, why should I charge by imparting these gifts that's been bestowed upon me when I have a haircut that's, say, for example, on the level of conversation such as this? I feel like saying, just take it and go, because this isn't about money anymore. This is about trying to spread something a lot deeper. If I'm vibrating high, then you have permission then to vibrate highly yourself. And I feel like that's what's spreading the love.
That's the reward, isn't it?
That's the reward. I think when they say spread the gospel, to bring it back to religion quickly, I never ever thought that it meant Bible bashing. Spread the gospel means I hit you over the head with it and say, read this. I don't even say to a lot of Christians, other Christians, read the Bible. Because if you do, you're not going to understand anything that it says. I said, you start out with commentaries, look what other people have said, and then draw your conclusions, because you have to have that initial understanding first. Otherwise, you're not going to know anything that it says. You won't get it. It's so drenched in allegory and metaphor that if you're not in tune, I think, in the beginning to comprehend it, then you won't. So I say, start baby steps, commentaries, listen to podcasts. But yeah, before I get like wait,
Yeah, I want you to read your stuff. But no, going back to religion though, like
whenever you're ready, I can.
I find people go to church obviously just to tick that box. And I find I find what I would when I went through. Obviously, I've discussed before, but I think just living the way of Jesus. That to me, that's if everyone was to live the way of Jesus. In love by the neighbor, and do you know what I mean? Connect. Imagine the vibration of
Christ
everyone.
consciousness is vibration.
Imagine that change.
But he brought violence, and he said it himself. I've come to bring a sword, and he overturned money changes in the temples, and there was great fire in the man, right till the very end. He wasn't pure gentleness, he was love, but love involves wounding people to show them their true nature, right? And that's why a man that speaks the truth is destined for solitude. He's destined to be a lone wolf because the sheep are not ready. I mean, the guardian canine is cast out fundamentally, and alone he transforms into what he was always, which is a lone wolf. So I think this whole concept of sitting in church, having a day for church, that's fine, but it's not for me. I've never been a day in church. And my understanding of the Bible is growing. It's a complex book. It is not designed for the masses. It is drenched in allegory for a reason. Even Jesus said it himself. He speaks in parables because it is not for them to understand. It's not for the masses. He came for the disciples. And the apostles, those were the initiated. And the Gnostic Gospels speak to that, which is that this knowledge is for you. There is the bits for the masses, and the real knowledge I'm reserving for you, which is why I think it made it heretical.
It's empowering.
Yeah.
Don't like it, Orthodox institution, hate it, empowering it.
Well, that's what happened, wasn't it? Constantine, wasn't it? That's where it all changed.
The Council of Nicaea, and that's
Chalcedon and all that kind of thing.
There's a long story, but essentially where I've got a problem is that they commodified Christ. They commodified a man that really, did not want to be commodified. He hated the money changers, the people that traded, the merchants. And here we are in a world that commodified him, and he said, don't worship idols. And here we are sitting in these churches, which to me have become modern day idolatry, crucifixes, and they've hung pictures of him elsewhere. All of it takes away from the incorporeal nature of the journey, which is within. The kingdom is within. Explore your mind.
I feel like it takes away from it if you allow it to. From my perspective, I garner lots of comfort from having iconostasis in my house, certain saints and everything, because I'm like, all right, a saint is the vessel in which the light shines through. They're not perfect. So when I think to myself, okay, I've got Mary, I've got Jesus, got my icons of the saints. And so to have them around, kind of when I'm in my darkest moments, I look at them and think, this one was martyred. He went through this, he went through that. These are people that, died for what they believed in. And I understand that if you're just kind of got them up there just because, the artwork looks good, it's a very personal thing. So I know in the Bible it does say, and this is where it relates back to churches, not to be like the Pharisees and to pray standing up so everyone can see you. It's meant to be done behind closed doors, which means that prayer is meant to be a very personal thing. And going back to what you said about how you don't do churches, I think I understand, because I only personally get benefit from a church if I'm in there alone. Because even if a church is on a busy main road, you go in there and it's just silent. If the icons mean something to you, then they mean something to you. But when I'm in there with other people, I feel like you've just walked into this glorified fashion show, which I know we do Orthodox Easter. We got a Greek side of the family. And my cousin said to me, mind you, because it was the first time I was doing it, it's a bit of a fashion show. And you go there and everyone's filming the epitaph coming down the stairs and you just think, what is happening here?
It's ritualistic,
Yes.
It is ritualistic. And but I think that the journey inside has to become ritualistic. This is why I get up every morning and write everything that's kind of going on through my mind. Whether it's right or wrong doesn't matter. You're simply documenting stages of your journey. I think journaling is critical. I've always encouraged my children to journal things, and it's a vast world within, and looking at the world outside is comforting because we understand that world, or we've been taught to rationalize that logical world. The world inside is completely illogical. It is the realm of dreams. That's why dreams seem so illogical. But dreams themselves carry so much heavy symbolism that means something. Every dream means something. It's just dream interpretation and dream analysis is a lost art. It is a lost art. And, religion, I've talked about my dreams to men of strong faith, strong ideological, grounding. And they've said that's the work of the devil, that dreams are influenced by the satanic. And so with that type of mindset, how can you ever truly understand yourself? Because these dreams are inserted by the deepest layer, the self, the true self, into your own consciousness to allow your personal gnosis, personal self-realization.
Critical thinking and being able to do due diligence is a very first basic step to, I think, achieving that.
100%. And this is the thing with intelligence. We were with a child before earlier, and I just really love the company of children because they come from a place of non-manufactured intelligence. Theirs is the intelligence of the soul. And so there's a critical difference between IQ, right, and true intelligence. These things like ChatGPT, their IQs, if you were to measure it, would be 300, 400, 500. And, I see people say that they're moral authorities or authorities on certain things because their IQs are really high. That's rubbish. That is absolute utter rubbish, because that is a manufactured intelligence. The intelligence of the soul is immeasurable. It can only be found in things like art and poetry and in the play of children's in their innocence, their curiosity. So when I look at a work of art, like something like Tolkien's Lord of the Rings, or Tolkien's poetry, or Da Vinci's artwork, that is the intelligence of the soul. And so that is how that the numinous or God figure is alive in that person, is their creative ability. But creativity has been stripped from our jobs. It's been stripped from our schooling system, from university. And why? The reason it's been stripped is because it allows you to reconnect with that energy that seeks you to remember. And there are forces within this cosmos that do not want us to remember. The Gnostics called them the archons, demons or demonic entities. And that is basically the name of the game. It is God is seeking to remember himself through vessels, which are us. And the game is that there are agents of chaos that want that divided, that want to stop us, sentinels, so to speak. But for those that remember, the game is done, truly remember. And Jung said it, Carl Jung actually said it. There's a very interesting saying attributed to him, which is that those that individuate early often tend to die young.
Oh, wow, it's funny you say that.
Yeah.
It's funny you say, well, yeah, it's like once you see the light, you get closer. Yeah, it's strange. That's why I said outside, if you find, you get to a point where you feel like you're on top of the mountain, you're seeing stuff, and then something will hit you and knock you off.
Yeah, absolutely.
I get that all the time, man.
Absolutely. And mate, the depths, they're deep. They're fractal realms to explore that this journey may not stop. For those that have individuated in this level, there is a level beyond and beyond, and we can't fathom it. And this is what I think Vedantic philosophy says is a multiverse or infinite dimensions. I don't think our minds can fathom it. Our minds or our nervous systems allow us to filter consciousness through these 5 senses to experience 4 dimensions: time, height, width, and breadth. But once you open that third eye, that 6th sense, you rip your pineal, your third eye open and produce your own endogenous DMT. You don't need to smoke it. You produce DMT. Once you produce that, now you're harmonizing with the sixth sense, and that sixth sense allows you to see beyond. It's the realm of imagination, But who's to say that we stop? Like I see these, false messiahs and these spiritual types that say that somehow that they've transcended, that they were in the light, and this is their final incarnation. These people are not. I've got no time for them. I prefer to spend my time with, wretches. I love wretches. I love someone who's homeless. I love to spend time with them and just to find out about their journey. I love the old guy in the bar who's an alcoholic. I love speaking to a woman who's a prostitute. I want to hear her story, because they will offer you pearls of wisdom, and that's what this life's about.
Is that why they can't, like going back to the Matrix? I say the crazy guy on the street is usually the one that knows the most.
Yes, absolutely.
And society kick him to the curb.
Absolutely.
Or going back to being a sinner. You do something bad, that's it.
Absolutely.
You're out.
Absolutely. So a lot of these people that have descended into this utter chaos, the Greeks call it eros, the chaotic energy. They are now dancing in the realm of the unseen, in the realm of the shadows. Unfortunately, they have jumped from the crucible into the fire. Now they're existing in the fire, and they can't logically put it together. But a man who's jumped into eros, that erotic energy, which is a very feminine energy, and then clambered back into the crucible, and can combine that masculine energy of logos, the logical thinking, well, that they become a force, because they can essentially logically compose what they're seeing in that world of chaos. And that's important. It's essentially bringing back the divine madness and putting it into form. And I suspect that's why I write a lot. I'm just simply describing what I see. And a lot of people that read my work, I've had colleagues comment on it. They say it's unhinged, but to say it's unhinged misses the order in that work, the composition within it, which to me, because I feel like I'm working at a soul level, comes without much effort. It really comes without much effort. So I've been accused of using artificial intelligence to write, and that is that to me is the greatest compliment, because what they're saying is it's coming from a place that's non-human. And it's right, because the realm of the soul is not man's.
Haters be hating. That's how I see. Like, people don't understand it, so they knock it down.
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. Yeah.
But you have to communicate now. It's trying to communicate. But you could be on that mountaintop. You could live in your farm and live a life and that peace.
Yeah, I think I'm drawn to solitude. Solitude. I enjoy the company of my dear wife. She's someone who holds me accountable. And sometimes as your ego is starting to touch aspects of the self, there is something called a messianic complex. You can develop, your ego fuses to the self, and you think the self is you. And that's a very dangerous place to be in. That's how cults and these false messiahs are born. Yeah. And I can see that with me sometimes. I have a tendency to then preach, which is a horrific thing to occur. Really, I should be dissolving ego, not solidifying it. And so my wife is a very spiritually attuned woman, Tam will tell me. And she, brings me back down to earth, my anchor. So, I think solitude is critical, but at the same time, to seek pure solitude means that you're really in danger of being lost in the self. Yeah. And most of these people will fuse with the self. And this is what made Jesus very, very powerful. He was the self, manifest as flesh, right? And he completely and utterly understood himself. And that is God made manifest as man. And none of us are gods. We carry the fragment of God, and one day, like a drop, dropping into an ocean to become the ocean, we too will achieve that. But Jesus was the entire ocean contained within flesh.
And that water.
Yeah, and that's why the world couldn't kind of hold him, and his journey was ultimately a he was a blueprint for how it should be done.
100%.
Yeah, it was a blueprint. He was essentially a form of, he was essentially an example for how we should live our lives.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good. That's what I was saying before. If we all did it, imagine poetry, man. Let's go.
You want to hear some?
Yeah, give us something, mate.
Yeah, I'd love to hear it.
Come on, Dr. Pran's here, mate. He's in search, He's going through these young guys, mate,
Yeah,
Well, coming from
And it's nice, the old souls,
a younger fella as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's a few. They're not too long.
It's okay, man. Read one or
there's
two, mate.
Three. One of them, obviously, it's a lot of it about me going through what I'm going through, not sleeping, having to have the physical manifestations of my illness. Even though I try in my head to sit and be present with it, sometimes it's very difficult. But there's one about losing myself, and then another about working in the barbershop. When I see people and they come in and I tell you like NPCs, and it kind of depresses you a little bit. So I write about that, and then one about my son as well. So I start with this one. It's called When I Find Myself Again. I believe so. Here I find myself again, late at night, transcending the weight of fatigue. My body is fighting a battle, but the enemy cannot be seen. It never ceases to amaze me how one sacred vessel, the body in which we house our soul, can become a battlefield, a vast front in which two trenches exist on each side. When the sun rises, I'm filled with a sense of duty and purpose, spurred on by the weight of obligation to my family and my craft. The world seems optimistic when the sun is shining, but as the indigo blue sky softens and intense shades of burnt orange and red illuminate the horizon, giving way to the passage of stars and galaxies, the battlefield stirs again. Bombs fall, and the poor soldiers in the trenches begin to reclaim, inch by inch, precious territory. On one side, reason, sleep and reflection. On the other, the sweet numbness of a melancholy cycle playing again for another night of sleep high as the clouds. That barrage becomes an inescapable storm of anxiety, forcing a retreat, and the opportunity to start again with the dawn of tomorrow's hopeful light. The emergence of the sun strikes deep into the hearts of the soldiers as the trumpets call them to their duty. Some have lain awake all night, others have numbed themselves with sacred plants. Anything is better than sitting awake just waiting for it to be over. When will this crucible end? My cross is getting heavy. There have been times regretfully I wished I was dead. With every accursed and insatiable itch, I'm filled with dread as each night becomes a battlefield inside my own head.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
That's absolutely beautiful. And there's so much deep archetypal patterns emerging there. The universe that we exist in, the ceiling or the cap is the sun. It's light. Essentially, you can't go faster than the speed of light. It would break cosmic law. And so when you talk about the sun, and you talk about the sun a fair bit there, you're essentially describing the limits of the cosmos. So you're feeling too big for the container of four dimensions, and you're fighting this battle within the four dimensionality, within the quadrantic container, and your soul is struggling to regain that memory of what it was, which is the true self. And so what you're describing there is brilliant, because it's essentially what God wants from you is for that fragment to fall from the place outside of the cosmos, which the ancient Gnostics called pleroma. Christians call it Eden. Everyone's got a term for it. You've fallen to carry a cross and fight a battle, which you so vividly describe in the poetry, only for your fragment of the self to evolve in that journey, to alchemize aspects of yourself and totally submit and surrender, because that's ultimately what you're talking about. You wish for total and utter surrender. In that battle, we think that one side wins and another side loses, but the real process of individuation is submission. Is submission to predetermined events, for yourself to step back and watch yourself carrying the cross.
It's the hardest part, something I haven't quite grasped yet. Me maybe being young and not having gone through enough. But then again, my area that I live in is quite notorious for being quite cushy and comfortable. A lot of people don't tend to leave. And not comparing myself, people have all their own internal struggles, but I feel like I've done and seen a fair bit more than most people my age have. You know, having had kids and everything quite young, and gone through an illness which radically changed the way I saw myself and my universe around me. But then having been in a job where I talk to people, and it's something we can all relate to as well. And this next one, I think a lot of people will relate to if you've worked with people and you've spoken to them and you've thought, man, like sheep, NPC, like you just kind of feel like, where's the soul in people? So tell me what you get from this one.
Aidan, I'd just like to say one thing before you go on to that. You might be young in chronological age, but your soul has probably played many revolutions in this, gone around many revolutions in this wheel of time. You know, one of the things that the Gnostics were radical for was this concept of reincarnation, which is thought to be Eastern philosophy. You know, that's the realm of the Indians and the Hindus. You know, but it isn't. It is spoken about in many cultures, including that sect of Christianity, which was obviously deemed heretical, because if you were to tell the masses that there is multiple goes at this thing called life, you can't create the concept of hellfire. You know, you can't create this concept of you either go to heaven or you go to hell, the binaries, which then allows you to commodify a religion to give you consequence and, you know, rules. You wouldn't get a group of people that followed rules. And so you might be young in terms of age, but your soul is probably seen some things. And when you're writing in that type of deep archetypal soul pattern, that is the work of someone who's seen things and is starting to remember things. Sorry to interrupt.
No, that's fine. That's fine. Well, with this one here, it's definitely more about the advent of adulthood and the bittersweet flavor that brings. But also when I'm in the shop and I talk to people that just seem to kind of be existing. And also when I drive to work and I see the huge line at the bus stop of people going into the city, and you just kind of think to yourself, like what trap have they got us into? It's ridiculous. So this is kind of birthed this piece of work here. It's called The Bittersweet Dawn. The dawn of adulthood is a bittersweet sunrise. Premature alarms invade ethereal dreams. What a luxury it must be to rise with the sun. Awakening from our slumber, the masses shift and stir. The engine of the world sputters to life. Survival mode has no off switch. We stumble in fight or flight, competing for the scrap, as obligation and necessity fuels us for another lap. To observe the engine is a fickle thing. The vessels drift, yet the soul is seldom seen. The twilight of youth ushers in a melancholy dawn. What in this life has the engine lost? In the eyes of a child there is a vibrant spark. For every new experience harbours a raw divinity, an endless adventure of virgin discovery, life's purest form of ecstasy. Like a black, heavy leaden sky, adulthood beckons ominously, and the spark begins to falter. The engine is forever pursuing purpose, lost in a labyrinth, confusing needs with wants, chasing light in a tunnel that never comes, an elusive trap as we complete yet another lap. If we regain the spark, the light we would surely catch, and our childhood eyes, long buried deep by distraction and ignorance, would serve us again. To rediscover the world through the eyes of our youth, will reveal at the bittersweet dawn our freedom and our truth.
Goes back to the young.
Beautiful. I love that. I love that. You know, what we're essentially doing here is we're around a digital fire, basically, the old campfires of old, where time was not so much a commodity that was rare or expensive. Time now is something that is deeply expensive for people because we're so burdened by these enormous cost of living and mortgages and economic stresses, and it's done intentionally to make time expensive. Thus, we can't have these discussions of the soul. And what your poetry there reveals is people trapped in that endless revolution, cyclical damnation, where they can't actually sit down by a campfire like we used to and discuss the amnesia. Basically, we cannot have the great remembering because the archons, if you were to look at it from a Gnostic perspective, maintain us in that cycle. So money has become the thing that rules most people's lives. And unfortunately, we're trapped. We're trapped, and people can't remember. And you're speaking to that frustration very eloquently. I like that.
I appreciate it. Well, there's one more, and if you've got kids or sons especially, so Daniel, I know this one will definitely ring true for you. I said just before, you can't let the storm inside you wet your kids. And me going through my crucible, me being in the forge, I wrote it because I felt that I was getting him wet. And so I thought, let me put this on paper, and maybe this will be the point where I stop. So this one is called My Boy. Your flair for life is truly a blessing. At times I wish I knew it more. The waves crash over you, yet you remain unshaken. All too often, I feel as though I might drown. Your perfect health, a testament to those who give us life. I'd happily give you a part of me, should you ever need it. Your restless spirit brings forth my shortcomings. All I ask of myself, I see in you. Please forgive me, as it projects through. You fall asleep with such ease. Now I'm truly jealous. As I gaze upon your angelic face, I struggle to feel my own worth. There is a reason you chose me, and I know one day you'll see. Without you as my anchor, my life would be bereft of joy. Our journey is far from over. You've truly awoken the best of me, my boy.
I love that, man.
Beautiful, man.
There's so much depth there. So much depth there.
I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, I love that. I think you're writing to your younger self. You know, I think your boy is allowing you to see aspects of the young Aidan, and you're essentially writing to that innocence and purity and that ability to fall asleep. That is all you, through the mirror that is him, and that's a glorious thing to be able to write that for your boy. He'll one day read that. And,
just as well, I loved my childhood,
Oh.
and like it was, and just to think now, I can't even remember a time where I could go to bed and fall asleep. You know what I mean? And then I can see him. We're watching something, and he's there drifting off, and I just think, shit, how do you do it? How is it that these children have this innate ability not to be in their own heads, because they're still, their umbilical cord in the physical world is cut, but they're still tethered with a spiritual umbilical cord to source that's just keeping them in this beautiful like existence that's just completely unfiltered, no scaffold. It's just pure ecstasy for them. And I always thought to myself, I had a black book of poetry at home I couldn't find, but I wrote constantly in that about how what makes a child's life so colorful and magical is that everything they see and discover is new, and that then breathes into them this energy that everything they're doing is just a new experience, and it's just this pure form of joy. And that's what people, when they kind of grow up and they start working and their responsibilities are on their shoulders, there is nothing new. It's literally from home to work,
They lose that,
and you lose that lens that childhood gives you, and that's why I ask when I pray. I said, don't take away this affliction, just give me broader shoulders to be able to carry it. And when I think of that imagery, I think of Atlas, you know, the Greek, the Greek character, of course, to carry the world on his shoulders.
Oh yes.
And I feel like everyone has a little bit of Atlas in them.
Yeah.
But I think, you know, what it comes down to is realizing that half of the thing that's in that world, you don't need to carry the weight of the dead, everyone else's expectations. You know, if you're empathic, you take on the energy of everyone else. And me being where I work is a big thing. But you go back to Marcus Aurelius, one of the best tools in your tool bag for dealing with this is just indifference. You know, you got to let nature do its thing and try not to control it too much.
You're speaking to the rules of detachment, you know, which is a very Vedantic philosophy. But again, scripture, Christianity contains a lot of that. You know, I think Yeshua says, "Don't come to me unless you hate your father, brother, mother, sister." He's not speaking to literal hate, but he's speaking to detachment. If you're truly tethered to the physical world, where you're bound by tradition, cultures, and laws and legal systems, you're never going to remember. You're limited by the people around you. And let's be honest, most of the people around us are significantly limited in the way they perceive the world. Their demons become yours. So you got to love them, but let them go.
Yeah,
Let
it
them go
is
with
detachment,
love.
isn't it?
Yeah, you let them go with love. Draw the boundaries around you. Boundaries are critical because it protects you from them, which allows you to then continue that journey. It's like an inner moat. And you've said now you're going to explore that castle that is you, the temple.
Such a good characteristic of a really refined person to be able to have barriers and that moat, as you said. Because a lot of people, I think, when they're in the process of digging that moat, they immediately hit with all these problems like the fear of being disliked, or what if I'm different? What if I'm standing out too much? They think my walls are too high. Judgment. It's very interesting, but they always say that tends to fade with age, but I still get old guys coming in that have not even grasped the first rule of moat digging at all, so to speak. And
absolutely. And these are the people that fuel things like, the red light districts, for instance. They on the surface they come across as these respectable people, but at nighttime in the shadows where no one's watching, or pornography or whatever the hell it is, that they are confessing themselves to the sacred prostitutes, basically. And that's why ancient cultures considered prostitutes sacred, because there were places where men would go to essentially cleanse themselves of the world. And that's why that industry has so much of it's the oldest industry in the world, because these people carry masks. These men carry masks. They've never truly sat with themselves. They've never sat with the woman within, the divine feminine that all men carry, because they're taught that they should be men. They should never shed tears, or on the flip side, same with women, that they should be feminine.
Silly rhetoric.
It's true. They're the ones with weird fetishes too, mate.
100%.
Feet fetishes,
Absolutely.
wearing
Because
strap-ons.
that erotic libidinal energy is now manifesting itself in a close space, because they've never truly sat with themselves. So I hear, a lot of people talk about, fetishes and erotic stuff, and it always takes me back to the basic principles. They have not realized the energy within. That erotic energy is a creative energy. It is a pursuit of wanting to create, to do something worthwhile, which they've never sat with, because they're in a 9-to-5 job that's all about logos, which is logic. And that eventually rots them.
That's their way out.
That's their way out. That's their way out. So it's a form of escapism, just like any form of hedonism, whether it's drug taking or drinking or gambling.
Well, you were just in Thailand.
Wow.
Talk about how, I don't know if it's Western culture, but especially dudes in Australia have turned that place into a real cesspit. But even then, I guess the Thai that are involved in it have a role to play too. But look, I've never been to a red light district in Amsterdam. I've never had I never understood the whole Thai thing. Like, I understand that older guys, when they get older, they want the companionship, and they kind of typecast these Asian women as just will do anything just to, all right, their freedom for your companionship. But what was the feeling like when you're walking through, you see those old guys in there?
It's just they're paying for it. It's just service.
It's essentially Babylon. I mean, it's fundamentally modern day Babylon, not Thailand, the entire world. It's transactional relationships built on nothing, and it's lost souls leading each other along. One's searching for companionship, the other one is searching for a transaction so that they can feed the family or feed themselves. It is it's built on illusions. It's built on unconsciousness. These people identify with being the vessels on top of the ocean rather than the self. It's just become a playground. I've never been drawn to these sort of places. I've never been to Thailand. I've never been to Netherlands. I know some people see it as a way of just acknowledging that these things exist, but it's never really interested me at all, because I'd rather kind of sit with myself and understand who I am. And that's not to say that one can't have desire. It's understanding what that desire is. If a man seeks a feminine energy, he's fundamentally seeking a mirror to expose his own internal feminine energy.
Plugging a hole, really.
Yeah, well, that's right. And so the true journey is the unification of those binaries, for a man to realize his feminine potential. So when you write poetry, like that, Aidan, and yet you've got a job that might be logical. You're essentially channeling that feminine energy. A lot of men carry a lot of that erotic eros energy, and they might pursue a job like hairdressing because it is a creative thing. Has nothing to do with sexuality, right? That is a separate thing, and it's not what I'm talking about. It's essentially, how creative can I be? That is the feminine aspect of a man. And a lot of men are terrified at what that reveals about them, because they'll be typecast by their peers, their own friends. A man that writes poetry, well, that's, it's considered.
I think it's starting to shift now, though.
Well, this is why, it is shifting, mate.
Because we're at the crux of a societal breakdown. So when we're in the crux of a societal breakdown where we've neglected the shadow of each of us, the collective shadow of society grows. So we witness these freaks like, P. Diddy or whatever, and that becomes that spectacle, but he's essentially a reflection of the collective shadow, and everyone tunes in to see what exactly he did. Everyone wants to know the details because he is reflecting everything that is simmering beneath everyone that they haven't quite expressed or understood. So we're at the crux of a societal breakdown, which often leads to a global war, a catastrophe, as Jung said it, to find out the beasts or the wretches that we are. And we're shifting because people are collectively being called to individuate, to unify the binaries. So, this whole thing about, what's a woman, what's a man, because we live in a physical universe, that calling has now been manifested physically, that I must somehow change my gender to access that energy, but it's energetic. It's really about finding the deep feminine for us as men, and for women to understand their masculine role. Yeah,
it's important for us to find the feminine.
Critical.
I loved it. Like we talk about Mother Earth, and going back to the Gnostic Sophia.
Yeah.
What was there? Is that Mother? Is that Mary?
Wisdom.
Yeah, Sophia's wisdom. I mean, the story of Gnosticism, for your listeners or viewers that don't quite understand it, it's quite, if we were to simplify it, there was a great source, and from the source came emanations, they call them the aeons, angelic beings. Sophia was the most loved by the Creator, right? But she did something that was unfathomable, which is that she tried to be like the Creator and create. But she did so without the knowledge of her counter half, which was the masculine side. So she created something, and from her came a creature called Yaldabaoth.
That's it. Yeah.
The demiurge, which is our modern day version of the Bible. Of the devil, and the Gnostics believed that the devil was the architect of this reality, and he landed within this reality and said, "There will be no one above me. I am a jealous God fundamentally." So there's a lot of overlap there between biblical scripture and Gnosticism, but the Gnostics take the opposite view, that the creator of this realm is their devil. I think there's oversimplification in what the Gnostics are saying, if I can be so bold to suggest that. I think nothing happens without the plan of the source. I think everything is planned. So if Yaldabaoth was created through Sophia's mistake, it was predetermined by the Creator that occurred. And what the Creator is seeking is a crucible. The cosmos, the four dimensions, is a crucible where he can fragment himself and allow difficulty to occur so that he may evolve himself. He's looking to evolve in difficulty, and he uses us as the fragments to do so. And that energy of Yaldabaoth, or the devil, is a way of stopping individuation, right? Whereas the Redeemer frequency, or the Christ frequency, which is a counterbalance to the devil, is to unify. So one is seeking to divide, one is seeking to unify. So they're both the levers that need to be pulled to spark reality. Without either of them, there is no game to play. So how can the devil not be loved by God? Because he's an essential part of it. They're brothers fundamentally. The way I look at it, Christ and Antichrist, and it's obviously heretical and offensive to people. Apologize if I offend anyone, but these are my thinking. my thoughts is that those two are brothers, the Christ and Antichrist, and they're both critical for reality to exist. And the father of them is the unfathomable, androgynous. I mean, we say he's a father, but it's essentially androgynous. He's beyond gender, beyond our understanding. We can never fathom the mind of that. But the two brothers work in unison to allow this reality to exist, which is what the Matrix tried to portray in cinema. The Agent Smith being the devil / Yaldabaoth, Antichrist creator, and Neo being the Redeemer, Jesus, Yeshua. So that was what they were trying to describe. The architect of the Matrix was not the source. It wasn't God, but yet another being. And then they don't even speak to the original creator of everything, because that is beyond our knowing. So I think it's really important for people to understand there might be so many levels to this. There might be so many sentinels to this. It's a fractal reality that we can't fathom using these simple 5 senses of ours. So what do? You surrender. You surrender, you submit, you sit back, you become the observer of this predetermined set of events. And when you do that, an intrinsic morality arises, one that doesn't require someone to come down a mountain with a tablet of stone with commandments inscribed on them, but an own personal law, which is that, just play like a child, write like a child, have an imagination like a child, love children, because their purity is incredible, and we must fight to protect that innocence from a system that wants to rob them. And guess what Yeshua said about coming to that kingdom? He said, come like a child. And that is why I am convinced that kingdom is the realm of the mind. It's imagination. Come like a child doesn't mean you shrink and become a child again. It is allow your imagination loose so you can let yourself into my world, which is the realm of a mind. And I think we inhabit a great mind, and we are minds within a mind.
Yeah, we put the mask on, don't we, really? Growing up, it's just taking it off, isn't it?
That's exactly right.
Creativity and imagination. So imagine putting yourself smack bang into the Enlightenment era, the Renaissance, all of that. Can you imagine the juices that would have been flowing there amongst those people, really flowing through them?
And I think it's about to happen again. I think those that are called have been called to create. We are here to create a new world. We will rebuild from a fallen Leviathan. We'll rebuild from the bones of a fallen Leviathan. And I think what we're witnessing, these little tremors that we're starting to see is, let's be honest, World War III has begun. Yeah. And we're driven into that difficulty to acknowledge that shadow aspects of ourselves, these darker aspects of ourselves. Predetermined. It's all pre-done. This was pre-written, prophesized, and we're simply fulfilling prophecy. These people, these politicians think that they're acting out of volition or free will. No, there is no such thing. We just have to step back and witness the game play out. But you know what? In difficulty, you see the best aspects of human beings sometimes, and perhaps we need that. Perhaps we've lived in a world where things have just come too easily. We've pardoned hedonism. We've consumed not just food, but everything without, regard for Mother Earth. I feel a lot of disease is fundamentally the desecration of our great mother. And now it's time for her to shed her skin and regrow a new skin and a new epoch. It's all cyclical. It's happened before and it'll happen again, but the question is whether your soul wants to be trapped in that eternal cycle, or whether you choose to transcend and move on to the next level. I don't think we need to be in a hurry. We've got eternity and multiple goes at this game called life.
Yeah, we do, don't we?
Yeah, we do.
Levels to a game, like they say.
It's a divine game.
Yeah, it is.
A divine play, as the Hindus called it, the great Maya, the illusion.
This is what I was saying to you before, I think at Nick's wedding, about the levels, Sometimes you get to a level and I want to advance. I want to advance a few levels for the next time, And you do see, like you say, there's people you drive past the bus stop, they could be level 1, level 2.
That's right. That's exactly right.
They just don't see any further.
Right.
But what are they all missing is the question. What is the purpose of the game? Not only to challenge you, but to use your thinking, but at its very core, at the very crux of it, it's made to be enjoyed.
100%.
You know, and I found a lot of personal freedom when I finally started enjoying going to work. So you know what, this is not that bad. I enjoy this, and it just changed everything. Yeah. Just the way that you perceive it, just the way you just change your mind a little bit, just change the story a little bit. You know what? I enjoy it. I'm there with my family. I'm meeting people. I'm networking. Yeah. What's not to be enjoyed about that? I mean, if you got to go to a bus stop, you got to stand there and commute. Boom, podcast. Yeah. You know, but instead, a lot of them don't do that.
Well, we used to talk. You know, you go in the elevator, you used to talk to people years ago. No phones.
Is that true though? Because I always, because look, I was born in the late 90s, so
that is very true.
I missed a lot of it because I always thought, all right, a lot of the older people will say, oh, look at these young kids always on the bus on their phone. And I said, yeah, but isn't it reading a paper the same kind of level of antisocial?
Yeah, back in their days, but there was a stage. Yeah, my growing up, there was never. You talk to people, mate. Yeah. You go to the elevator, say hi, and they hop.
I guess
hallway.
This is showing my.
You have eye contact.
I don't really remember a time where anyone ever spoke.
No, you were brought up with
technology, mate. If anything, it's a faux pas. You don't do it. It's like almost frowned upon now.
Yeah.
On an airplane in an enclosed space because there's no escape route. So you're forced to I guess dig up a part of yourself in dialogue that you just don't want to. Because that's ego. I'm too good for this guy. I'm in a closed space. This guy looks a bit funny. I don't want to talk to him. You know, it
takes a simple high, mate.
Yeah.
You know?
I think you know, going back to, you know, people and in the bus stop, consciousness is upgraded slowly. You know, I think we go through stages of consciousness. Consciousness can't be, a fragment of consciousness can't be introduced into the crucible, you know, in its full entirety. That doesn't work that way because it would be overwhelming for that fragment of consciousness. So people just have to travel at their own pace, and that's what I think these people are doing. They're going at their own pace. You'll see that in the regional areas, there is a greater sense of community, and people communicate, they talk. I'm not saying that they don't have their own issues in the country. You know, they're at the mercy of the elements there. And there are elements of the city that have gone there, like the food systems and so forth. So everything is a big city now. But people in regional areas, farmers, and I spend a lot of time with farmers because of my involvement in that rural community, they've just got time for you. And there's more time around a campfire under the stars talking about some of these aspects that we're discussing here today. You know, like what is the meaning of all of this? Yeah, people tend to do that when they're out in the elements.
Yep.
Yeah.
Beautiful existentialist philosophy.
Oh, it's the best. And that's what we were talking about before, man groups, you know, just even doing this. This is brilliant. Yeah. And you got your farm. I know you've spoken about before in previous podcasts and that, and you do a lot with the cattle and, you know, that gives you your time to get away there.
Yeah, I think so. I'm just sort of living my dream, Daniel, you know, which is that I just want to be free of this. I can never quite be free from the chains that bind me, but at least I can add links to it and wander out, you know, or out of Plato's cave. You know, Plato's allegory of the cave is brilliant, is that Plato, obviously a great thinker in that era, he said that mankind is born into a cave, right? We're chained, and there are people behind us, and there's a fire behind us, and they project things, these architects of the society. We could call them the archons, you know, as per the Gnostics, you know, the evil spirits that keep us contained. They cast shadows on the wall of the cave, right? And we look at those shadows and we say, that's our reality. We look at each other and we say, look, that's our reality. We're chained. We don't know any better. We were born there. And Plato said if one of those slaves was to escape and see the surface and see reality for what it was, he would be liberated. But he'd go down and try and rescue and liberate the people that were changed, and they would laugh at him initially and say he's mad. And then eventually, if he pushed hard enough, they would hurt him. They would kill him. So that's Plato's allegory of the cave. And here's the thing. You know, when you have time, when you're freed of the ritualistic behaviors of the 9 to 5, you can start slowly wandering your way up, and then eventually you're out on the surface. But to go back and tell people about it is dangerous. And so this is why you have to be unapologetic in your perspective of what you've seen out there. If you're waiting for approval for people to applaud for your perspective, well, that's you know, it's a false dichotomy.
It's not going to happen.
I know we said we weren't going to talk about it, but this is exactly how I felt during lockdown. Turned off the TV, busted out my books, busted out my cookbooks, used all that time to cook, to read, to better myself. I went, we got a home gym, thank God, we're very lucky that we have that, right at the beach. So you train, you get up, you eat, you train, you go to the beach, cold plunge, be with your family, be with my wife, be with everyone. Like the first time I actually felt, honestly, not free, but just at liberty to just pick and choose what responsibilities I had that day. And it was, I just felt my jaw unclench, my shoulders drop. I was working from home. We had all the people coming to get their haircut in the garage, and they were just on the same wavelength, and it was beautiful. And when you try and go out into the world, you run into something. You go for your little walk. Everyone goes for walks. In Manly was packed every day in lockdown. But, there was that classism where they left us alone and they crucified you guys for, God forbid, going for a walk out west, but all the beaches were left alone. And you run into someone, you run into those people that are wearing masks as they're walking, those weirdos, and you're like, oh, how are you enjoying this? Oh, it's great. I'm getting paid. I turn off the news. We're cold plunging. We're playing football at the beach. And what are you guys doing? Oh, we're just getting out and then we're going straight back home. Mm-hmm. And I said, but if you just switch that narrative and just ignored it, you'd actually liberate yourself and enjoy this time. And you discover some things about yourself. Oh, but no. Then the spread and all the bloody terminology that went with it. And I feel like that's a lot what you were talking about. It's just exactly how it's how you're looking at it, right? I mean,
it gave you the time to have that solitude, mate. Like I talk about the cabin in the woods, It's like you could go there.
Yeah,
you could physically go there now, but it's coming back. You got your job to do. You got your family, and it goes back to Stodge did a podcast, and Maronite priest, really good actually, and he spoke about love. You can be that cabin, you can be there, but what's the point of living? We need love, we need interaction, need to give it and receive it. We need that connection. So you could be selfish and take off,
Yeah, absolutely, and like what is the point of someone who's a Buddhist monk and not having a go at Buddhist monks, but if all they do is transcendence, seek transcendence, they're probably very, very old souls in the final stages of their reincarnation cycle. But do they really benefit society in the sense, are they out there pulling people into the depths and saying, look at this? And are they interacting? Are they allowing others to be able to individuate? Because we do need each other. There is a temptation to be alone, right? I won't have a partner, I'll buy a dog and that dog will give me infinite love, but the dog's not a mirror. It just likes you unconditionally. It's instinctive. That's not love. Love is to be able to turn the mirror on someone that you're entangled with and show them as they are. That is true love. True love always risks wounding. True love is always painful. Not always, but it once you start appreciating that the reflection that they're giving back, that's a beautiful thing. Most people reach that, and this is why I think divorces have become so prominent, because people start seeing themselves in the mirror, and in rage they shatter that mirror. And obviously we've got a sick parasitic vampire system, which is that industry, the divorce industry, that swoops in and it muddies the waters. But really we're called as mirrors for each other to be able to reflect that. And Aidan's poem to his boy was beautiful, because his boy is a mirror showing him the young Aidan. He's essentially showing him when he was carefree, a time that he was carefree. So when he's envious about the boy, he's actually envious about himself. We're all mirrors. And it's a beautiful thing.
And you do reflect that, having a boy, when you, even if I was saying before, the father figure too, you reflect on your relationship with your father as well. I do when it comes to my son.
Yeah.
And it's like I'm stuck in this relationship with him, and that would affect that one, and that would, so you sort of got this generational pull,
100%. And, my wife Tamara said it really beautifully, and she's such a wise old soul. I said, in my 40s, I'm thinking so much more about my childhood than I ever used to. What the hell is going on? And she said, well, having children now growing up to reach that stage where you have a memory of yourself at that same stage, allows you to reflect back on yourself, on your own experience, essentially. That's why having children is such it's a transcendental process. It's a challenging process, and they test you, and it's not all fun and games. but you're essentially being able to see the person that you used to be before society fragmented you further and, allowed you to put on the masks,
Yeah, and that's where a lot of people have trauma. And it comes back because they haven't dealt with that.
100%. It's all childhood. It's all intergenerational. It's all childhood. But going into that kingdom within to slay dragons, that is the journey. That is the hero's journey, is the journey within.
Yeah.
And once you start feeding these demons, they eat out of the palm of your hands. And once you free them, actually unlock them from yourself, they become little fairies. The demons come out, they grow wings, they're no longer dark and twisted. They're beautiful. And so it's just allowing that inner child within you to come out. And I don't mean that in a pretentious sense, it's not all light. And this is why a lot of these spiritual gurus, I detest them, because they make it out that spirituality is all light. That's all part of the messianic complex. I think spirituality is acknowledging the darker aspects of yourself and understanding that the devil is not outside of you, it's within you.
Yeah.
So once you realize that, even the devil eats out of the palm of your hand, I do believe, eventually.
Yeah. I agree with that, 100%. That's what you're probably wrestling too with at the moment. You're probably at the start of it, going through your transition, to see where you end up as well.
So I told you, I feel it. I feel something's happening. I can't put my finger on it, but there are certain people, certain energies, certain entities that are being drawn to me, and you feel like you're on the precipice of something. I can't quite describe what it is, but in comparison, say since January this year, and then you compare that to maybe January last year, it's just a completely different feeling. It's just that everything that you're reading, all the philosophy, everyone you're meeting, is just like something's happening. I don't know if it's the world around us changing, or if I'm changing, or you're on the edge of something great. But I don't know. I don't know if you guys feel it too. Do you feel it in the air that there's just change, but it's not negative change. It's positive change. And when everyone kind of says there's a spiritual battle out there, we're all going to war, and all the sheep will come in, and I'm about to go overseas, and how could you go to America now? Aren't you scared? I said, what are you talking about? No, of course I'm not. But what if you get hit by a missile? Well, then I guess I'd die, wouldn't I? So fucking what? But I just feel like we're even if the world is changing, and we have this mindset where we can just sit back and just enjoy that change and try and be a part of it and use that to grow ourselves.
It's alchemy. Alchemy is the process of turning lead into gold. People take that literally.
No, that lead being yourself, Hermes Trismegistus.
Yeah, that's right. So when the fire in the crucible is being turned up, which is the chaos that we see, which is the work of the devil. The fire is the ability to turn the heat up. Thank goodness for that, because it's essentially allowing that lead to be alchemized into gold.
Yes.
Right. And so you say, well, is it the world around me changing? No, the world just turned up the heat.
Mm-hmm.
And what's changing is you within. You could either descend into fear and remain lead, or become a lower metal, or you use that fire to transcend yourself into something purer, which requires a lot of reflection, introspection.
Absolutely. It's that funny thing. I remember when I was on with Nick a little while ago. Have you ever seen the movie The NeverEnding Story?
Oh, dude, that was the
80s?
Best, mate.
I love that. My mum into Falcor. I was watching it with my son, and I'm
Sebastian.
I was watching it with both my sons, and Odysseus was there. He's obviously too young, but I said to Adonis, "What's that? Look at Falcor. What's that?" He goes, "A dog."
It was a big dog.
It's just funny because he calls everything a dog. But anyway, there's that one scene that I loved that I just kept thinking about when we're talking about mirrors, when Atreyu gets to the scientist that studies the Southern Oracle, and the Southern Oracle is one of two gates, and the first gate you have to go through, and the two Egyptian-esque beasts on each side will pulverize you if, when crossing through the threshold of that gate, you don't feel your own worth. So if you walk in there and you start to self-doubt, boom, pulverized. And in the movie, we see that knight in fancy armor gets pulverized because it's just fancy armor. And the scientist says, here comes someone that looks the part, but let's see what he really thinks of himself. Boom, pulverized. So Atreyu goes through. He's obviously absolutely drenched in self-belief. But then he rushes to the next gate without consulting the scientist, who then kind of has this, not a soliloquy, but almost breaking the third wall kind of thing into the camera, but just off, not looking directly into it, saying the real gate's coming up. The real gate is basically one that encapsulates when you get there, you see your true self. And when Atreyu gets to that gate, it's just a mirror. That's all it is. It's a mirror.
That's the meaning behind it.
And the scientist says most men, when they come up to this gate, which we find out later is a mirror, they said they run away screaming. And so basically, essentially, when he looks into that mirror, he sees Bastian reading the book. And then it's just this amazing scene about looking at your true self. And that's what makes that story very special, I find, because reading it, Bastian was able to, through Atreyu, basically absorb the self-worth that he had and bring it into himself. It's just an amazing 80s movie, which most people wouldn't look at it with such like a lens like that. But me, I kind of tend to overanalyze everything. So my missus hates, because we're watching a movie and I'll pause it and I'll be like, you know what this means? She'll be like, fucking don't do this, please. It takes us 3 hours to watch a 1 hour movie. And I said, yeah, but this just means something. She goes, just let us watch the movie.
Symbolic thinking. That symbolic thinking is the domain of higher souls. You know, it is the domain of people that are dreamers fundamentally. Society doesn't like dreamers. You know, that's the archetype of Joseph, the dreamer in the Bible. You know, the multicolored coat. He was the favored one by the father. You know, the father loved him the most. He was the dreamer, and when he stated his dreams to his brothers, one of his dreams was, well, we're all wheat on the field, shafts of wheat, and I stood up, and my chaff of wheat stood up, and all yours bowed down to me. He told this to the brothers, and the brothers were like, how dare you? You know, how dare you? And they tried to kill him. His brothers actually tried to kill him, and then eventually sold him to the pharaohs. But it is that perspective of he who dares to dream has to face the wrath of the of the archons and the Agent Smiths of this cosmos. And remember, Agent Smith in the Matrix can manifest through anyone. It can come in through anyone. And so that's what happens when people drag you down, when you're a dreamer and a thinker, and you have this imagination of a child. That is the Agent Smith manifesting through them. And you just have to have your boundaries, and true love, I think, eventually results when people can just accept that aspect about you. You know, those that stick around, like your wife's clearly stuck around despite that trait of that implies that there's an element of love to that, you know, which is a beautiful thing.
She's complex. I mean, COVID was a massive thing for us. Obviously, one side being very, can't you see what's going on? And the other side being, I think you're thinking over it too much. This is a real thing happening. And, you know, credit to her, she, you know, came out, and what I wanted from that in terms of how we treated our kids when they were born, in terms of certain medical practices, eventually she came through when I told her I didn't want to partake in them because my eyes were open so much. Just honestly, it's just being aware. You see a narrative, boom, red flag. Well, I'm not going to get involved with that. Yeah. But, you know.
She stood by you.
Well, she stood by me, but as much as it is a wanky thing to say, I'm starting to maybe understand now maybe why she came into my orbit and why we're meant to be. Am I meant to teach her something? Alternatively, what is she trying to teach me? Because she's always saying to me, get out of your head. You know, you're on the couch, you're there suffering. You got to go and get stoned. Like, what are you doing? Like, just get out of your head. Just flip the script. Come on. And then she just falls asleep like that. She breaks all the rules in terms of like, no screens before bed. In 1 hour, you got to take your sleep magnesium. She can be on her phone all day and then put it down, go to sleep. And I said, how do you do that? She goes, because I just don't care. And I'm just like, man. So I feel like we both have something to teach each other in this
keep writing your poetry,
journey.
Mate. That's your way.
I wrote a fair bit about her, but it's in my other book. So, but it was funny because I did write something in there. It's quite long. I won't read it unless you want me to. But it's long. But we had this day we went into the city. We left the kids with my parents. We went to the Fulton Hotel in Martin Place. We had a beautiful day in the city. We went out to eat in Surrey Hills. We stayed the night, and I went to my auntie's house in Rockdale and had a family barbecue with all my cousins. And there was a lot of us there. And that was the most joy and happiness I'd felt in such a long time. It's only a few weeks ago. So I wrote I wrote from literally when we got on the bus to when we left my auntie's house, 2 days. I wrote all of it.
When you're with your wife.
Yeah, I wrote exactly how I felt, what I was feeling, what color the sky was, and I read it to my sister and her partner. I was in the garage. I had my joint. And I'm like, guys, I'll read something to you. And I felt like a literary genius. I'm like, oh, art, the troubled genius. And my Peter, my brother-in-law, was like, bro, can you record that in a soft voice so I can listen to it as a sleep story, because it was beautiful. And I'm like, oh man. And that's what I mean. It's just bringing it. I'm like, you have those moments. I got to put this on paper. I got to put it on paper because it's such a beautiful moment I want to encapsulate.
And structure it. Structure it, because unless you structure it, it is just purely an emotion, and you want others to be able to experience the emotion that you felt. And that's what this game is about. It's about experiencing emotion to transmute the soul. You need emotion to be able to grow. And part of this whole process of becoming the observer is not to be emotionless. It's to observe yourself going through the emotion. So feel the pain, the joy, the love, the anger, the rage, all of that. You're supposed to feel it. That's what helps grow you, but also step back and observe yourself going through it.
Yeah, that's the best part, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's where people got to stop and step back.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, no, mate. I know you're a busy man, Pran, but we should do this again, I reckon. Catch up every so often, mate, because there's so much to talk about.
Very open-ended kind of beating of the minds, this one. You could just keep going in any direction.
Oh, yeah.
We're all capable of adding something to it,
Oh, of course. And even going back to what's the Greek gods, mate? Anarchy. What are they
Anunnaki.
called?
I was
Sumerians.
going to
The
ask you about
Sumerians
that
too.
when you talk about that motif of brothers. I was going to say, do you kind of adhere to the Enki, Engel kind of thing, but then the concept of duality, which is all through Gnosticism as well.
Yeah.
It's very interesting that we're getting David
same
Icke kind
story.
of stuff.
Same story retold multiple times. Cain, Abel, Enki, Enlil, Christ, Antichrist. It's the story of duality. It's the story of polarity, and it's probably the same all through every culture. Good and evil, Tolkien wrote about it. Tolkien's genius is so underestimated in that Lord of the Rings. People think it's just a work of literary fiction, but it's not. It's the grand telling of archetypes. And there's a book which is actually the Genesis book, right, which is the Silmarillion, which was his book on how the Middle Earth came to be formed. And he talks about creation, right? And, when you read Genesis, it's beautifully poetic in the Bible, but Silmarillion takes that and almost expands upon it. And he was a very devout Catholic. And Silmarillion is all the story of, it's essentially Gnosticism, but just told from that poetic lens. So it's just grander archetypes. These blueprints have existed before time and we are doomed to go through them again and again and again and again and again. Not doomed in a bad way. It's just cyclical. This whole reality is cyclical. That's, Solomonic words, King Solomon's words in the Bible as he's writing his masterpiece, Ecclesiastes, in the end of his days as an old man. He said, this reality is all cyclical. There's nothing new under the sun. The wheel of time continues to turn. Souls blaze in. We go through experience, emotion. In that crucible, we grow, we transmute. And one day when we have a full remembering of what we are, perhaps there is no rebirth for that type of soul. You just dissolve into the Creator, where you and the Creator are one. And it brings us full circle back to that statement from Yeshua to the Pharisees, ye are gods. If we look at it from an egoic sense, that sounds deeply arrogant. But when you look at it from a metaphysical lens of no ego, that is ultimate humility and surrender.
And when you talk about that too, I'll tap on before about ego. Like, how do you get rid of your ego? How do you control it? What do you do?
Mate, I've got the biggest ego.
Yeah.
Enormous ego. I can be so deeply arrogant, and I am arrogant. But at times I can melt that too. It requires me to I think just having people around you, but this ego allows me to do things too. It allows me to build things, and without the ego, I wouldn't be able to do that. I would just sit in a cave like a monk and just meditate. But the fact that I can flick between ego and no ego allows me to then form a logical, coherent stream of thought to be able to sit here and communicate it with you guys. But mate, I'm still on a journey. I'm still on a journey. I'm not saying that the ego's gone at all. It's there. It's present, and I don't want to get rid of it. I like it.
Well, the goal is not to totally banish your ego, but more just to control and harness it as a tool.
Absolutely.
The devil and angel on your shoulder.
That's exactly right. You're a pen. You're essentially a pen for something greater than yourself, and to be able to pen that as thoughts, or to paint that, or to create, or have a hobby farm and grow some, vegetables. Like, this is all the self manifesting itself through creativity. And that's what we have to do. We have to have a population that frees up time to be able to create. And if that involves having to move out where the mortgages are far less, so they don't have to work as hard to free up time, if it means moving into the regional areas to try and free up time where you're not sitting in traffic for 3 hours, well, so be it. But to do that allows people have to break all the rules that society set for them.
Yeah.
The rule is that you go from, if you're someone in the regional community, you gravitate towards the city because that's where you're told that you can start a life. Maybe the reverse is true. Maybe if you're birthed in the city and you're used to these four walls, these concrete walls, maybe you seek something out in Mother Nature. Simplify your life. Go shop for your food at a farmer's market instead of the duopoly that is Coles and Woolworths. Maybe we back out of this corporate system slowly and unravel ourselves. Maybe the kids are homeschooled. What if they are? So what? So what?
Yeah, because you got your own cattle too. You do your own goat. Make your goat curry.
I hunt a fair bit. I bow hunt, and I love wild goat. I think it's a great source of protein. And I got my cattle. I don't eat my own cattle. Not quite that brave enough yet. I love them too much.
You've named them.
Yeah, no, not quite. I haven't done that. Then there'll be no business if I name them. But yeah, spending time on the land recenters you to the algorithm, which is nature, which I think the Gnostics call Sophia, to bring it back, which allows you to engage that divine frequency. You're able to engage the deeper self when you're immersed in nature. That's why people feel great after they've swum in an ocean, because it cleanses you and recenters you back to that divine frequency.
And that goes back to the time. Like, actually, your second last post, which was that called? The time. You had the what was it, I got it up here. It was your.
Is it Arjuna?
I love, man, you got so many, seriously, like I love your stuff, mate. I am time, destroyer of worlds. Explain that one. I like that.
So time, destroyer of worlds, that I wrote that at 4:30 this morning. I got up early, a bit of coffee, bit of music, and it just flows. So I'm talking to the Vedantic brilliance. I was born a Hindu, but I utterly rejected the idol worship and the ritualistic praying that my own parents partook in. I love them, but it just, even as a child, it never made sense to me. I hated it. And as I've gotten older, I realized the brilliance of the ancient Hindus, the Vedantic texts, before the caste system was brought in and the commodification of religion came in. The brilliance of the Vedantic philosophy was quantum level physics, and some of the things that they spoke about. But the story of Arjuna and Krishna is one where Arjuna is a warrior prince. He's called back to fight his family who have taken over his kingdom, and it's his right to win it back. And he's out there with his chariot driver, who's a guy called Krishna, and he looks over at his family, his cousins, his friends, people that formerly were that, and he says, well, I'm going to spill their blood. I don't want to do this. So he's about to turn back, and Krishna says, no, you don't. You are identifying with yourself too much. There is a divine pathway that is already predetermined. It is your role to fulfill it. And when Arjuna's like, who are you? Krishna reveals himself as a avatar of Vishnu. Vishnu is part of the Trimurti. In Hinduism has its own trinity, which is Brahman, Vishnu, and Shiva. And above that is the source, right? And then you've got the trinity of the Trimurti. Krishna reveals himself as Vishnu, and through Vishnu reveals himself as the Trimurti, and through the Trimurti as a source. And Arjuna sees that time is cyclical and everything is contained within this repository of totality. And it humbles him and he falls to his knees. And in doing so, he realizes that it is his right to fulfill that divine predestiny. He has no choice in the matter. And therein lies his free will to be able to step back and observe himself going into battle and spill the blood of his loved ones. So it is teaching so much. It's teaching you about determinism, which is fate. It's teaching you about free will. And it's teaching you about surrender to something greater than yourself. Perhaps we are simply instruments for something bigger. And perhaps we take ourselves too seriously.
Yeah, very much so. Instruments like what to produce as well too, you know.
Yeah, maybe we are
like
arrows.
That,
you know, maybe we're arrows. Let us loose. You know, the archer of the arrow of time pulls us back and releases us, and it is our job to just plunge into someone's heart. And that there is humility in that. You know, in understanding that, because what we are currently in a world where we are told it's all about us. It's a world of narcissism, what the Hindus call the era of the Kali Yuga, where everyone just identifies with the body instead of their soul. I walk around and I'm seeing people just obsessed with how they look. Respect the temple of the body, but understand that you are more than the body, that the body is there as a place where you can worship and realize what you are. But we live in a secular society, Daniel. Like there'll be a lot of viewers and listeners that would have switched off to all of this because they are simply not ready. And, you know, that's fine.
Yeah,
and those viewers that have, you know, stayed back and listened to all of this, their soul is seeking. It's seeking a remembrance. And aspects of what we've spoken about will reignite that amnesia that they've got, that spiritual amnesia, and good. Good.
That's why you're here.
Yeah, and I'm not too worried about who I offend, you know.
No.
Yeah, I love you, and if I love you, then I must risk offending you.
Yeah, that's right. And be offended. Like it means like you're doing something right. I got comments as about being a preacher, you know, starting this. Yeah. I took it as okay. Well, I'm not, but thank you.
Yeah, I mean, listen, like a lot of people have told me, why would you want to go on Daniel's show? He's controversial. And, well, it doesn't matter. It allows you a platform, you know, a digital platform or a digital campfire to be able to disseminate a perspective. We've all got a perspective on the greater source. Some people's perspective are just broader than others.
This is why I am controversial, mate.
Yeah.
I don't mean, my whole life I've been like that, mate, you know, and that's when I actually accepted it.
Yeah.
And I've like, okay, well, this is who I am.
Yeah.
Whether it's the ego, like you say, I've learned how to, but I'm a good person. I treat people with respect, you know.
The role is not even that. It's not to be a good person. It's not to be a bad person. It's to be a complete person. You know, how complete are you without knowing what your bad side is? So when I see you talk about some of these, you know, I see that you've brought people out here talking about fetishes and sexual perversions, and I've seen some of the content and some people squirm at that.
Yeah, of course.
But what you're doing is bringing things that are in the shadow for most people into the light, you know, and most people lurk around with pornography and so forth. You're bringing that into the light, dragging it out. Remember I said, like demons, when they lurk inside, they become dark and twisted. Pull it out.
That's it all.
Pull it out and discuss it and openly admire it, and perhaps then it's no longer a demon.
You know? The world would be a better place, mate.
Yeah, well, yeah, exactly. And just remembering that primal primitive energy, that erotic, chaotic energy is essentially a creative energy. We are here to create. Yeah, we're creators, exactly like our divine self. The divine Lord or God self, whatever you want to call it, is a creator, and we are made in the image of that creator. We're here to spark our souls to create. We're here to do cool stuff, not not blindly follow the rules of the sheep.
Sit there and judge the black one.
That's fine. Let them judge.
That's
Let them
it.
judge. Let them judge. Most of the sheep will go off the cliff at some point.
I like what you said there, pulling it out of the dark. I think when you're talking about the devil or that malevolent entity that kind of is keeping us tethered here, whether that be, our love of materialism, or I feel like maybe when you're talking about the devil or that energy, I think it fears getting pulled out into the light, because then it does get exposed as a weak, soulless thing. And that's all it was all along. And when you expose it and you start being creative and you start banishing it, and I feel like that would solve a lot of problems, just being a little bit more creative and shedding light on something, because it's that dark mysteriousness that gives it its power. You know what they say about powerful people? They rarely speak and they kind of stay silent, and that is kind of a way of garnering power, because you're not giving too much away. But once you expose and shed light on it, all of a sudden those barriers are broken down. Yeah. And I think through creativity, that's exactly how you expose the trickery of the devil. You got to put it under the light and expose it for what it is. And that's a little fucking weed.
It is weird.
It has to be plucked.
Absolutely. And I think there are some points in a person's life where they are deeply compelled to speak, dragged out and compelled to speak, and they should speak. If all you're doing is gathering power by staying silent, what does power ultimately achieve? It is fundamentally about dissolving illusions, and if you feel compelled to speak.
Well, it makes you feel better too. Obviously, get it out, whether it's good or bad. I think that's the way. That's why counsellors are around. People need someone to talk to.
Absolutely.
If you have your own people to talk to, have your own place, you can go and have solitude.
But I do think the more complete people become, the less compelled they are to bother to try and change others. I think people come to that realization. A person who's deeply individuating in that Maslow's pyramid, starting to complete aspects of themselves and unify broken aspects of themselves, they realize they're not here to save others. They are here to save themselves. So, a lot of times when I'm writing, I'm writing for myself. I really don't care who reads it.
So I like it.
Yeah, I don't care at all what anyone says or speaks about me. I'm fundamentally penning my thoughts to allow me to organize them. Otherwise, it's a chaos. There is utter chaos in my mind. Not in a bad way. It's brilliant. You need the chaos to be able to be able to write, and you need the devil in you to create. So it's all about organizing the devil. It's eros and logos. Logos is that organizing principle. Once you start unifying that, you start doing some pretty cool stuff.
Yeah. Even in going back to like your last one here, unleashing Lucifer. I love it.
Yeah, it's good. That will piss a lot of people off, especially those that are ideologues, because I've written that piece from the perspective of the devil, and the perspective where the devil is the most favored amongst God's angels, right? But is told God is speaking to him in my version of Genesis, where God is speaking to him saying, you need to go down and create chaos, and your brother, the Redeemer, Christ frequency, will go down to unify. Both of you guys are needed down there so that we can spark Genesis for me to evolve. And there is a moment there where God is bloodletting. He holds a razor to himself and cuts himself and releases his essence into the cosmos, and that is us being created. It's like a violent version of Silmarillion, but the devil voluntarily enters cosmos to create chaos and division within it, and does so as his own personal crucifixion. I will do that for you, God, my Father, and I will do that willingly. That is my own sacrifice to you. So I've written it from Lucifer's eyes.
And hurting the ones around them too, you say.
What's that, sorry?
Well, it said you hurt ones around you, your loved ones, it's like people around us.
Yeah, well, you, in order to be able to think, you have to be able to wound.
Yeah.
If I love you, then I'll wound you, because not in a perspective of, drag you down, in a perspective of cutting a chain open, where you can now start liberating your own thoughts, because the people that hurt you the most, maybe in this lifetime, love you the most outside of time and space. You know, so the people that have really hurt me are probably the people that have taught me the most.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's why you thank them.
Yeah, you got to
I
thank
thank it.
Yeah.
I thank them for it, you know.
That's
if
exactly
I have
right.
pain, I accept it. And
That's
I
exactly
understand
right.
where they're coming from, and that makes me
You
forward.
turn the other cheek, don't you?
Well, yeah, it's the obstacle's the way. Same thing, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, anything else to add? Because we could talk for hours.
Well, I'm happy to come back, guys. You know,
Yeah,
at some point,
I think
there's so much we could cover.
Yeah.
We'll come back. I mean, I think, you know, an hour to 90 minutes keeps the attentions
Correct, man.
of the masses. You know, we're living in a world of very short attention spans thanks to these reels and social media and so forth. So if you've stayed this long, congratulations.
Thanks.
Your
Thank
attention
you.
span's not cooked.
Yeah, it's not cooked. Yeah.
It's not cool. We can't say too much. Your sister's brought some more food, mate. She's the best.
If you've been following my podcast, Stodgy's podcast, Daniel's podcast, you know, my sister went away for 2 years and lived overseas with her partner in Europe. And in that time, following the COVID pandemic, absolutely rebirthed in her head a love for organic cooking. These cinnamon scrolls you see before you will not make you put on weight. They will not flare up any type of intolerance you have because they are 100% pure, grass-fed, organic. All the buzzwords you can think of are thrown into there along with a big dose of love. And is basically just confectionery that you can eat without the guilt. And it sounds like I'm trying to sell you something. But apple pie, anything you can think
Apple pie
of.
was good, mate.
That pie was good. So
We'll have it afterwards.
yeah,
You can't. You're in a eat me, not the
they're,
brand.
they're fantastic. I'm still transitioning off carnivore, so not for me, not yet anyway, but I'll get there soon. As soon as it's time for me to get a bit of gluten in there again, Dane will be there with a nice pie for me.
That's why we'll have you back. We got more of the journey to explain. You know, there's a lot more happening, especially with yourself. You know?
Absolutely. No, happy to come back, guys. I've enjoyed the conversation today. It's been very liberating to communicate with guys that give you a platform that you know allows you to sort of open your wings and soar a little bit. And when you soar, when you fly, you can see a bird's eye perspective. If you're constantly on the ground, you won't see the whole picture in front of you.
Yeah, man. No, I agree. You're going to finish with a poem, do you?
We could finish with a poem.
Yeah.
Thank you.
See how you inspired him, mate?
No, it's beautiful.
This
I mean,
is
he's
beautiful.
clearly got talent, though. I mean, he's
got a lot of
incredibly
talent,
talented.
young
you know.
man.
I wrote, there's 3 I haven't read. One of them is about my travels, in my wife being Mexican, about Mexico City. The other one is another one on the edge of the wilderness, which is another one of encapsulates my suffering, and one that's more about self-aware. So what do you want, a positive one and maybe a travel one?
Whatever you want to finish.
Mexico
what do you reckon,
City.
Pran?
You ever been to Mexico?
Let's hear the Mexican.
Let's hear the
one.
Mexican.
Yeah, let's hear the Mexican one.
Well, this is why I can't wait, because in 5 weeks I'll be heading back there. God willing, everything is positive.
Yeah.
So this is called 5 Minutes in Mexico City. Where in the world can you still encounter magic? I know of such a place. An infinite mosaic of colours and contrast, ley lines and lamenting souls. The echoes of their resolute cries poetically traverse a maze of concrete, chaotic power lines and gilded palatial colonial facades. A bittersweet song of a resplendent past, long buried beneath the urban sprawl. Physically buried, culturally intertwined, and spiritually alive, the people embody a special marriage, once torn from underneath them by an imperial hunger. The flame ceases to burn out. It smoulders inside those who dare to defy, an unrelenting passion refusing to die. You need only but hold out your hand and join in the dance, for it is through you that flows the timeless waltz of the old world and the new. Slowly sinking but forever afloat, they are content with their hand. Here existence means survival. Time is fluid. It seeps through like sand. Your senses awaken as if for the first time. Like waking to the wonder of your own rebirth. Taste and touch thrust you into an alternative universe. Now a new empire rises. Creativity and self-worth rule this place. Limitless sensory delights will nurse you back to health. Enough so to resurrect the smile of Cuauhtémoc himself, who was the last Aztec emperor, mind you. To feel every emotion in tandem is truly a holy sight to behold. To feel the warm embrace of a quilted tapestry, opulent yet gritty. This is 5 Minutes in Mexico City. Still stutter a little bit too much, but I think you get the
It's
message.
beautiful, mate.
If
Yeah,
you
it's
know
beautiful.
anything about Mexico, a lot of colonial versus indigenous themes in there, because if you ever do visit, you'll find that they become inextricably linked. Colonialism and also the superstition of the Aztecs have fused with Christianity, and it creates this tapestry of just absolute organized chaos and magic. And that's why I started it like that, because in Mexico there is true faith, and that's why magic is still able to happen there. They have people that can heal you, people that can do limpias, energy cleansings, and you just feel like anything is possible there. Even though a lot of them are poor, they're happy. Whereas if you come around here to my neighborhood, no one's really happy. No. They're still kind of tethered to, they haven't accepted their reality, whereas they're always happy because their acceptance, as we said, they've got faith and they've just surrendered that that's the way it is. So let's make the best of it. And that's why I love going there, because you just feel like you can do anything you want, and you're just happy. And that's where I can't wait to take my boys. They're half Mexican, and the thought of them playing in a plaza, embracing and exploring their culture, even though they might be too young to realize it yet, is enough to heal any illness I have, just basically through pure joy and happiness.
Beautiful, man.
Beautiful, man. Yeah, beautiful.
All right. That's beautiful, mate.
Thank
Good
you.
way to finish. Pran, thanks a lot, mate. Always have a lot of respect for you, mate. Always.
Pleasure, mate. Thank
All
you.
right, we'll
Thank
see
you
you
for
next
having me
time.
on. Definitely. Thank you,
All right.
guys. Thank
Thanks,
you
mate.
both.